Dr. Breeze, thank you for being here with us on the inaugural event. Let's go ahead and just get started with an easy question. Talk to me about how you got involved in healthcare as a profession.
Well, that is started from way back when I was probably about 4 years old. I, always wanted to be a doctor. Not exactly sure why. It just was one of those things that I said, and then people, were very approving of that professional choice. And so I, went along in my education career and with the goal of being a physician. And once I got into medical school, I really enjoyed medical school. I couldn't decide what I liked the best about medicine, so I picked family practice because as my profession, just because I thought that was the most, broad thing that I could do, and I could kind of put my fingers into every little thing. We do a little bit of orthopedics, we do a little bit of gynecology. It just seemed like a really neat career. And then, to be frank, I got out into practice, and it was, I enjoyed it for about 4 years. Really loved the patient interaction, really enjoyed my patients a lot, but found the work a little bit routine, a little dull actually. I was not excited by 30 ear infections and colds and people coming in with a variety of things. So that was my start was in medicine, and I really know a lot about. I love the idea of caring for people, but I realized that me being the actual person who was taking care of the patients wasn't as exciting to me as creating a really awesome healthcare experience for people.
Mm-hmm. And so then, after several years of being a practitioner, you decided to switch to get rid of the white lab coat for the suit coat. So what was that transition like, and how were you able to make that happen?
It was a really lucky break. In fact, my personality, I think I'm a terrible employee, and probably most of you in this room understand what I mean. I was employed by a hospital when I was a physician, and I was always button heads with the administration. I always felt like I had a better idea of how I could run the practice and how I could make things happen. And so at a certain point, I put my foot down about certain things that were happening, and I got gently told that I was being given a timeout. Which is kind of funny, but the CEO of the hospital actually used that term. He said, "I'm going to give you a timeout until you can, work well in our system." And so I said, "Okay, this timeout is going to last for my entire life." So I walked out of the hospital and decided I was going to run out my non-compete and go into practice for myself, because I felt like that would be a much better fit for me. But what happened was that my husband is an orthopedic surgeon, and he had a practice that was struggling, and while I was at home waiting for my non-compete to run out so that I could go back into practice, lucky for me, his office manager precipitously left his practice. And he was devastated. He didn't know anything about the business of medicine. He didn't know what to do. He was standing there with staff and patients and no office manager. So I said, well, I'm just here. I don't know anything about business, but I could come in and just kind of hold the pieces together until we can hire somebody for you. And so I came in and really seriously just held the pieces together, because I really had no business background at all.
Yeah.
And what happened was, magically, in the first 2 months that I was there, his revenues doubled or tripled. And he came to me and he said, "You're a genius." And I said, actually, I'd love to take credit for that, but I am not a genius. I don't even know what I'm doing. So therefore, I think that maybe your office manager was stealing your money. And that is exactly what ended up happening. We got accountants and people in to take a look, and so I looked really good, and all I was doing was not stealing from us. So what happened after that was that I took it upon myself. It was like sort of a mission for me to understand business so that nothing like that could happen to either one of us again. I still thought that I was going to be going back into practice for myself, and I said, you know what, now's the time. Let me learn the business of medicine. So I actually paid he had an accountant at the time, and he was a really nice man, and I went to him and I said, I've been in medical school for a long time, and then I was out in practice. I don't understand what income statement is. I've never seen financials before. Can I pay you by the hour, and can you teach me? And he said, I don't do that. But then he actually, I guess he took pity on me, and he started teaching me what I was looking at. And sure enough, I really got into it. I really started looking at the business in a different way. I started realizing there was so many things that could be better about what we were doing. And I started developing a business plan in my head on how to take this little 2-doctor practice in a professional building with 3,000 square feet and turn it into a comprehensive musculoskeletal clinic. And that was it.
And so, walk me through that. So how did this business plan come from idea to back of the napkin to investor presentation?
Again, this was in the school of life, not an MBA class. So I was basically got online, looked up how, and this online at that time was like, not like it is today, but there were some articles about how to write a business plan. Mm-hmm. And I sat down, and every night I would just, work on the pro forma, which of course, with the help of my poor accountant who was teaching me, we went through it all, and I felt like I can do this. I see this, this idea of people being able to come to one spot and being able to get diagnosed, seen in any imaging or anything that they need to get to the diagnosis would be in one spot. I imagined that we could actually treat them, for instance, with therapy, physical therapy, in the same location, so they wouldn't have to go to different places. And later, as the vision developed, we thought about including a surgical center so that they could just get it all done at one place. And we actually added pharmacy. So really it was one-stop shopping, and that was the idea of Richmond Bone and Joint Clinic, which is what we ended up developing. We went from 3,000 square feet in that professional building, and I took this business plan out to 11 banks. 9 flat out refused me, said, you're a doctor, you know nothing about business, we don't want anything to do with you.
But I've been getting hour-by-hour lessons from an accountant.
That's right, I know. And
I know everything.
Exactly. And, they looked at me and they thought, this is going to be a disaster for somebody, and good luck to the bank who takes it. So we did have 2 banks that said, well, why don't you come back and tell us more? And after that, only 1 bank was left, which is really all you need. So I had my financing, and then I set out recruiting doctors, which ended up being something that I didn't realize that I had fallen into a kind of a neat thing. Of course, stepping back a little bit, I had trained my whole life to be a physician. My family, especially my father, was completely devastated when I stopped practicing and moved into business. Mm-hmm. And but I thought, well, maybe I just wasted all of this time in my life on becoming a doctor when I'm not really using that. But what ended up happening was that physicians were really okay with working for a physician. They trusted me. Because I wasn't a business person, mm-hmm. and they were willing to maybe do some things with me that they wouldn't have done in a situation where they thought that somebody smarter than them Really, I mean, physicians play, we talk a good game, but in actuality, we know that we don't know as much about, business and real estate and things that as other people. So we tend to get, physicians as a whole are known for making terrible business decisions and terrible investments, and so that actually was kind of funny. It was a great thing and a disadvantage for me. With the banks, it was a disadvantage, but with the physicians, they were like, she's just one of us. I would work for her. So I ended up recruiting 20 surgeons by the end of it. We had 3 locations, and we did a really good job at what we set out to do. We recruited some of the physicians as investors. They invested in the real estate, they invested in the practice, and it was a golden handcuff situation. They stayed with the practice, they helped us grow it, and it became very, very successful. We ended up selling it in 2011 to the Memorial Hermann Health System.
Right. And walk me through a little bit. I mean, for the Dr. Breeze, not the Breeze
Yeah.
with the street MBA.
Yeah.
I mean, what was all of this like, going through bank financing for the first time, going through employee recruitment and then retention, and then also investment and then exiting? How were you able to do that with literally no background experience in how to do that before?
Well, you know what? I mean, I tell this to everybody that is going into business for the first time. I think the main strength that I had was that I knew that I didn't know anything, and I was recruiting people constantly who were smarter than I was in every single thing that I did. So when I wanted to build a building, I actually contacted a whole load of contractors, and I called an old family friend who used to build houses, and I just said, I want to build a huge office building. I want to build a 22,000 square foot office building. He was like, what? You haven't done anything. I said, I know, but you could teach me. Why don't you tell me how you do this? And he said, well, I can't teach you how to do that, but I have this contact at the Houston Builders Association, and you could call them and see if they can give you some advice. Well, then I called over there, and little by little, I got to people who just thought it was kind of cool that I was trying to do, and they were willing to help me. I never paid for any of these consultations that I would maybe take someone to dinner or write them a really nice thank you note. Most people are really excited to share their knowledge and the things that they've learned over their years, and now I do it for other people who are starting too. It's really kind of one of I think the best things about being in business is that ability to share your stories and help each other. So I learned everything I needed to learn about building a building. I also got a lot of, when we decided to build a surgery center, that was kind of a complex business, much more complex than anything I had done before. And I flew to different places where people were willing to tour me on their surgery centers. If you find somebody who's proud of what they have accomplished, they're really willing to share a lot of great stuff. So,
absolutely, seems like humility is a good trait to have as a CEO.
I think it helps a lot.
Yeah,
I think it helps a lot.
So walk me through. So after we exit Richmond Bone and Joint, I mean, was it just trips to Hawaii and Paradise, or how quickly did you get back over to the business plan for Next Level?
So I was actually just telling Lester, I think that I'm going to enter a 12-step program because I'm like addicted to opening businesses. This is Next Level Urgent Care is my 9th business that I have opened, and they've all been either healthcare or healthcare real estate. But I was so afraid. I love being busy. I love being in the business world. And when I knew we were selling the practice, and that was a very kind of emotional time anyway, because I truly loved that business, and it was like a baby. I had spent so much time building it and growing it and nurturing it, and really as sort of one of the more interesting things that I think you learn over time is that really nothing ever stays the same, and the situation changed. Healthcare is very volatile, and for those of you who are not in it, congratulations, because honestly, what we have is, it's evolving fast. Where we were in time, I had 20 surgeons. These were really excellent doctors, and they were sought after. And when you own a private practice and you've got 200 employees that are counting on you to make sure that they have a paycheck, you have to guard closely your revenue sources. And my revenue sources were my surgeons. So what happened right before I decided to sell the practice was that I had several hospitals contact some of our surgeons and offer them money that they couldn't bring in enough revenue in our practice for me to ever pay them what they were being offered by the hospitals. Of course, the hospitals get more out of them than I could. So, a physician that works for a hospital system is going to be not only sending all their imaging, we had their imaging, but all of the surgeries. So if, some of these really big surgeries, total joints and spine surgeries, you can't do those in a surgery center. And so the hospitals were willing to pay a lot more money to get those surgeons so that they could guarantee those cases in their hospitals. When I realized that I was not going to be able to compete in terms of the salary that I could offer these guys, I knew it was time to move the practice into a safe place because, again, I had 200 employees. I was really worried about their livelihood and my ability to keep them employed if I started getting surgeons picked off. Because it takes about 1.5 to 2 years for me to really recruit a great surgeon, and in a month they could be gone. And so we started that process, and we decided to go to only the biggest healthcare systems because we had 20 doctors, and that's a pretty big practice for anybody to sort of acquire. And so basically what ended up happening for me was that, I just felt like if I don't do this now, they may pick up their own orthopedic, practices, and then we're kind of left out in the cold. So once I made that decision that I was going to sell the practice, I immediately started thinking about what I wanted to do next because I knew I didn't want to retire. I wasn't ready for Tahiti. I felt like I had, more, and I was still so interested in healthcare. I just didn't want to be cut out of it, but I definitely didn't want to go to work for a large hospital employer. That was not in the cards for me. So the first thing I did actually was I had a former partner. During the time that we had built the orthopedic center, I also was involved in several other ventures, and one of them was we built a rehab hospital and multi-specialty surgery center in Katy. And one of my partners on that came to me and said, hey, I have another deal. It's a bunch of doctors. They want to, they are really unhappy with their choices for end-of-life care in Houston, and they think that we should build a hospice because we did a good job on the rehab hospital. And I said, I don't know anything about hospice, but that really had never stopped me before. So I started learning, started calling people, and learned a lot about end-of-life care. And we did start a hospice company, which is called Vantage Hospice, and it's a really great company. We employ social workers and nurses and chaplains, and we provide really a beautiful service for people for the end of their lives, either in their own homes or in hospitals. And so that company is ongoing, and that was something that I kind of got into. But it wasn't like my passion, it was a really nice thing to be involved in, and I enjoy it a lot. But I knew there was something else that I could do in healthcare. And one of the things that kind of sparked my interest was that when we sold our company to Memorial Hermann, I was asked to stay through the transition. And I was asked basically to make sure that it was smooth from Richmond Bone and Joint to Memorial Hermann. Well, what happened was that I got to witness something that was really amazing, and it's something I talk about all the time in talks I do about healthcare and why it's so expensive in the United States. Healthcare is so expensive. What happened was that an MRI that we were doing the day before the sale in our facility was about $440. That's what we charged insurances. That's what we mostly, on average, got paid. The day after the sale, in the same MRI, in the same building, with the same MRI tech, everything's the same. That same MRI was now $1,200. It was $1,200 to get that same study. Memorial Hermann is a bigger entity. They have more leverage. They have better contracts. And so they had negotiated a better rate on their scan. But what kind of started me thinking was, so why isn't everybody screaming about this? Like, why aren't the patients going, wait a second, yesterday it was only $440? Well, number one is that yesterday they didn't get an MRI. They got an MRI today, so it is what it is, right? You probably don't question. If your doctor tells you you need to go for this study, you go for the study. They tell you what it costs, and that's what it costs. That you don't know what it cost yesterday. The other thing about it was that we pay usually a copay or a percentage. We don't pay the whole $1,200. So most patients didn't even know that there was a difference, because they would have only felt whatever their copay was.